Yo, what's going on, guys? Today I want to talk about the Sacramento Kings, according to ESPN's Shams Charania, are assessing this team as this year is kind of being seen as a transitional gap year due to the fact that Scott Perry, the team's first-year general manager, previously the Knicks general manager, is open to trade talks for Domantas Sabonis, Zach LaVine, DeMar DeRozan, and impending restricted free agent Keon Ellis, as he tries to build a gritty culture, which he says he is attempting to convince ownership that it might take 3 to 5 years to do so. So let's get right into today's video. Hit that like and subscribe button. I'd like to hear your thoughts. In the first year at the helm, General Manager Scott Perry is conducting a clear-eyed assessment of the Sacramento Kings roster, and the analytics present a stark diagnostic. The team's 6-18 record, placing them 13th in the West, is a symptom of a deeper systematic breakdown. A net rating of negative 10.6, 28th in the league, and a defensive rating of 26th, 122 points per game allowed, while being coached by a defensive-minded coach in Doug Christie, reveals a squad that cannot get stops and is being out-executed on a nightly basis. We all know that this is a hodgepodge roster that makes no sense. The film and stats show a group that is soft on the glass, 28th in rebounding, and permits easy looks, ranking 29th in opponent field goal percentage, 49.7%. This team validates Perry's mandate to instill a gritty defensive culture, as the current veteran core lacks the necessary two-way toughness and collective identity. Domantas Sabonis, 17 points, 12 rebounds, about 4 assists, 56% true shooting in 11 games. Sabonis is the club's premier trade asset, but his availability, only 11 of 24 games, parallels the team's struggles. His defensive limitations, particularly as a non-rim protector, are exasperated within this poor defensive core. Moving him now at peak value allows Perry to seek a return that prioritizes future assets and a defensive-minded five who fits the new culture. An acquiring team would want him as an elite offensive hub and a glass eater. Contenders see an immediate impact playmaker and rebounder who can stabilize an offense and control the boards, offering a high post passing skill set rare for a big. Now, if they were to keep him, it's because he's an all-NBA third-team caliber player. He is a walking double-double and almost a walking triple-double, and the only player providing elite production on this squad. The team's rebounding is historically poor without him. He single-handedly prevents them from being the worst rebounding team in modern history. Obviously, we know that the Golden State Warriors needing secondary creation and interior offensive presence, or the New Orleans Pelicans seeking a playmaking partner for Zion Williamson, Trey Murphy, and Herb Jones, could be two squads that I think within the conference that have interest. I struggle to see a team in the East that would want him, or would be able to get him. Let me know your thoughts. Now, Zach LaVine, averaging over 20 points a game, 38.9% from three, 62% true shooting in 22 games. LaVine is having an efficient year this year, but his scoring is viewed as empty calories on a losing squad. At 29, his prime does not align with a 3 to 5 year build. His lack of defensive event creation, being someone who averages just one stock a game, and score first mentality could clash with a culture shift toward defensive accountability. Trading him resets the financial books, and a team getting him is getting someone who has all NBA caliber and is a former all-star and is a 3-level bucket getting premier elite spacer, and as contenders in need of half-court shot creation and shooting and closing ability will value his ability to shoot from deep at a high clip. Now, efficient scoring is the most coveted skill. He provides a watchable offensive product and necessary spacing for the development of young players, and fits with Keegan Murray if they want to stay in a semi-competitive environment. While I think the most interesting squads would be like the Pistons, the Clippers, who need a younger complementary scorer to join Kawhi and James Harden. Pistons would like someone next to Cade Cunningham, and they could obviously absorb the salary and trade assets and maybe give up like a Jaden Ivey. Now, DeMar DeRozan, is a classic floor raiser who could be a rental piece and prevents the team from truly bottoming out, and a counterproductive trait for a franchise needing a top-tier draft capital. He blocks minutes for youth, and his trade value is at its zenith. Now, a proven clutch scorer and a veteran stabilizer, playoff teams will like DeMar DeRozan's mid-range mastery and a low turnover rate of 1.1, and the ability to settle offense in high leverage moments. The reason you might want to keep him is he is going to be an expiring contract soon, professionalism and mentorship, and for a GM building culture, he's a work ethic and kind of a leader. But I think the Milwaukee Bucks seeking half-court scoring reliability, and maybe, the Sixers, but they don't have the money to do it, but would be two teams I think in the East that would like him. Keon Ellis is averaging 5 points, 39% from three, playing 16 minutes a night, averaging 1.1 steals. At 25, he's an older prospect. If a contender offers a future first-round pick or a younger, higher upside player, he becomes valued in a larger deal, or maybe just a team that's in need of perimeter defense wants him. And that's because he's going to be a restricted free agent, which will allow you to get a cost control, low usage 3-and-D wing extended this offseason. Shooting 40% from deep and the defensive activity are plug and play for any playoff rotation. However, he's the prototype for the gritty culture Perry's engineering. Ellis defends, spaces the floor, and plays within himself, and is a perfect low-maintenance role player for any timeline. But I think the Celtics, Nuggets, Suns, Pacers are all teams that are going to be interested in him. Perry's presentation to ownership would have to obviously be a 3 to 5 year blueprint. It's because I don't think this team is one piece away. They're a 6-18 team with multiple all-star caliber veterans. The mix is broken. It's a negative 11 net rating almost, and that's not a slump. It's a systematic failure, and the core has proven it cannot defend at an NBA level. So the Kings are investing max money into a bottom 5 defense and a bottom tier rebounding team. They need to convert those depreciating veteran assets into appreciating assets, draft capital, and young controlled talent before their value erodes. And their pipeline needs to be behind Keegan Murray and company, because it's pretty barren, and Nick Clifford. Now move LaVine, DeRozan, and potentially Sabonis for picks and prospects, empower Keegan and Nick Clifford and Max Renault as the 3 guys you want to start. Give Keegan like 20 shots a game to evaluate his ceiling. Install gritty, low ego players around him, as we just mentioned, and keep Keon Ellis, in my opinion, and embrace this strategic losing to secure a high lottery position. And you maybe do that for the first year or two, because that'll be like the deconstruction and the installation of the culture, and then the identification by using those draft selections to get it to cornerstone. You begin to climb from the league's defensive basement, and by year 4 or 5, you're ascending. Obviously you have the cap flexibility from all the cap gymnastics generated from moving those veterans to acquire prime age talent that complements the developing young core. So the 6-18 record is obviously not an anomaly, but a verdict. Perry's argument is that win now experiment with his core has conclusively failed, that Monte McNair was forced to build due to Vivek Ranadiv's mandate, and the only viable path to constructing a sustainable, defensively minded contenders through a deliberate ground-up rebuild using trade value of the current veterans to fund the franchise's future. But yeah, that's it. What do you guys think? The rest of the video is going to be trade talks that we talked earlier. Bye. In a recent article by Sam Amick of The Athletic, he lists that the Los Angeles Clippers are interested in Sacramento Kings wing forward veteran player DeMar DeRozan, which for already the oldest roster in the NBA, it's kind of funny that that's the player that they go, or that they'd be interested in. Either way, any deal that would happen would probably happen in after December 15th, more than likely in January. And we're going to discuss just why. Obviously the reason the Kings would be doing it is the reason the article originally was written. Sam Amick was basically discussing that they're probably going to be blowing it up in Sacramento, and someone who actually has trade value is DeMar DeRozan. And if you're wondering why DeMar DeRozan at this point in his career has still, I guess you would say, trade value, yes, he is 36 years old, and it's not like he's an elite defender or going to be someone that's going to be breaking people down like he used to. But the LA native is someone who, if you guys didn't know, he was someone who has always repped LA coming out of Compton, I believe Compton High School, 9th overall out of USC. He's this year played 18 games. He's shooting 36% from 3 on 2 attempts a game last year, 32.8% on 3.5 attempts, and really just over the last few years, right under league average from 3-point range, while still being a near 50% field goal shooter. This year averaging 19 points, last year averaging 22. And with Chicago was 24 point per game score. But he is still a really good facilitator, even though now more being a secondary, about 3.5 assists a game, last year 4.5, the year before 5.5, and previously being up to 7 assists a night. And with DeMar DeRozan, what you're getting with him is still a guy who could be like your third best scorer as he's up there in age. He's still a consistent scorer. The mid-range specialty that he's known for is still there, and he's gotten better at being a 3-point shooter, even though it's not at a league average. But the explosion isn't there. He's not as explosive anymore. And yes, he can drive to the rim and score, but he's more of a solid passer in the second half of his career. And I don't want to say he's a cone on defense. He's just not reliable on defense, but somewhat of a clutch player. Now with DeMar DeRozan, he's someone that is making $24.5 million this year. Next year we'll be making $25.7. And if you're the Los Angeles Clippers, you have the salaries to get that deal done. It's really not that difficult for them to do it. And the reasons, before we get into making that deal done, let's just talk about what's going on with Los Angeles. And they are 5-12 this season. They're 12th in the Western Conference. They just look old. I think the biggest thing is that they look old. They're the 4th worst team or 5th worst. I think, 4th worst, 30, 29, 28, 27. 5th worst team in scoring offense, 5th worst in rebounds, 4th worst in assists per game. They are attempting the second least amount of field goal attempts. They're making the 5th least amount in the league. So they just suck at offense. They really, truly suck at offense. And their true shooting's at 12, 59%. So, and they also are like the 10th worst turnover team in the league. So everything on their offensive side sucks. They're just truly a bad offense. And the ball sticks. They look old. Everyone jokes around. They look like a YMCA team because the ball just sticks. And I'm not saying that bringing in a 36-year-old is going to be like a remedy to that situation. I mean, the hope is that it's going to alleviate. The biggest problem for me is the defense is also terrible. Well, they're 6th worst defense. They have the 7th worst net rating. Their offensive rating is 8th worst. They're actually just below their expected win-loss record from Basketball Reference of 6-11. They're at 5-12. When we look at this roster and we look at the salaries, if you're really just trying to find that $26 million, John Collins is the first guy that you could say, oh, that's an easy swap. But John is playing 26 minutes a night for them. And I mean, I'm not saying he's like incredible, but he's kind of one of your younger guys and someone that I think if you're going to have any success, let's keep him here. So with that being said, I don't think John Collins at all would be in there. I think Bogdanovich was someone that they were trying to move for the longest time. And I think when you look at the roster of the easiest would be Bogdan and Derek Jones. I think if you were able to use, because I know technically you can trade a player's salary that's hurt. In theory, couldn't you trade Bradley Beal and like either Chris Dunn or Nick Batum with Bogdan and get the deal? But some sort of combination of Bogdan and Derek Jones, or Bogdan and Nick Batum and Chris Dunn, or Chris Dunn and Bogdan, and that using Bradley Beal who's injured, or because the disabled player exception is there, but it's not. It's only used to fill for salary. So I just think when you look at the Clippers getting DeMar DeRozan, he solves what we said. They're a terrible offense, and he helps facilitate the ball. They're going to have another true, I wouldn't say true because they don't even have a true point guard. Even the James Harden's kind of point guard. But the moral of it is that they don't have a backup ball handler. And as much as I like Kobe Sanders, and Chris Dunn. Chris Paul's old as hell. They just don't have anyone to get that job done. And DeMar DeRozan, as old as he is, in theory, if you were giving up Bogdanovich, who's not really been effective for them this year, and I would like them to keep Derrick Jones Jr. because he's just been healthy and he's just been more athletic than the rest of the team, and use the other players. And Bogdan's a guy who's also averaging 9 points a game for them, even though his shooting splits haven't been the best. So if they're able to move off the old players, some of the old players for another old player, sure, that's fine. I just wouldn't give up anyone young or athletic for a 36-year-old. Do I think it's not the right move? Yeah. Like, if I was the Clippers, I think that's dumb. I think I wouldn't trade for another old person. Like, if I had a roster like the Clippers where it was already built with a bunch of older players, we would be looking for some athleticism, some youth. I'd be calling up a rebuilding team or a team like the Nets, where I could get somebody who could maybe help, like a Haywood Highsmith, or call up the Trailblazers and see if there's anybody like a Matisse Thybulle. And I know he's not going to be like giving us a bunch of score, but even like Cam Thomas would be huge if they were calling up the Brooklyn Nets. I think there's other avenues for them to go if they're really trying to maximize the team's ability to turn the season around and basically understand that, yes, they are old and their defense sucks and their offense sucks and they need to put more shots up, so they need a shot creator. And that's going to be given to you with DeMar DeRozan, but I think it's the rule of insanity, just trying to do the same things over and over again and expecting different results. And with that, bring in another old player that in theory would fix the scoring and ball handling and the ball sticking issues. But I think it would create a lack of spacing. It would make the defense worse. And I don't think your shot attempts would go up. I just think you need a 3-point bomber instead of just the guy who's going to take the ball out of the hands of your best players. So that's my biggest concern. Either way, if you made it to the end, hit that like and subscribe button. That's basically it. Hope you did enjoy. And if you were the Clippers were king, I mean, if you're the Kings, trade DeMar DeRozan, there's no point in keeping him. But if you're the Clippers, would you even entertain the possibility of trading a guy like Bogdanovich and Derrick Jones, or Bogdan, and the combination of players, salaries for DeMar DeRozan? Let me know. Bye. Yo, what's going on, guys? And today I wanted to talk about a report coming from my colleague Michael Scotto at HoopsHype. Yep, go check out our work at hoopshype.com. And he put out that the Bucks are keeping tabs on a potential Zach LaVine trade. And you're thinking, why would that? First off, the Kings have been connected to Kyle Kuzma for years, and Vivek Ranadivev and Kyle Kuzma just went in together on a volleyball league. And if you're wondering how the team, or what would the trade be, basically the trade would have to be Kyle Kuzma, Bobby Portis, and Gary Harris for Zach LaVine. This is not even getting into the draft picks, which you can tell me, what would you think the draft picks would be? Now, let me tell you what Michael Scotto wrote. So this is what Scotto put out on hoopshype.com. Basically, the Milwaukee Bucks have conducted background due diligence on Zach LaVine and others around the league as usual. However, nothing is imminent as Bucks superstar Giannis Antetokounmpo nears a return from a low-grade abductor strain. Which, obviously, we all knew this part. Now, moving forward, what we know about the Bucks situation is if Milwaukee should become interested in LaVine, that Kyle Kuzma, Vivek Ranadivev news and link is something that we've all been aware of for the last few years, as I had just aforementioned. LaVine is averaging almost 22 points this year, or so far, who's averaged 22 points in his Kings tenure on efficient 51% and 43% from three. And as a King so far, he's owed $47.5 million this season and just under $49 million in a player option for the 2026-27 season. So does that complicate things? I wouldn't say it complicates things, but it makes it very interesting when you look at it. And if you're a fan of the Bucks. I think they're a team that is in a position to be able to make a move, especially with the salaries that they have. Personally, if they could get themselves Zach LaVine, I mean, I've loved what Kevin Porter, I know Kevin hasn't been the healthiest, but Kevin Porter, Ryan Rollins, and I really, first off, and Cole Anthony, I think they've done an amicable job. I really like what they've been able to do as the team's guards. And they're more point guards, okay? And you would still be able to keep them if you were to do this trade. Sorry, I had an alarm go, but I think Bobby Portis is just a little bit starting to get over the hill. So if you're telling me you can, I think Kyle Kuzma's having a better year than he did last year. So with all of that being said, this would be, I think, an upgrade move. Like, if you're telling me you were able to turn Damian Lillard and Chris Middleton into Miles Turner, or yes, Damian Lillard and Kyle Kuzma at this point it would be, but you get what I'm saying. If you're telling me you were able to turn those two into Miles Turner and Zach LaVine, I think a lot of us would agree that that's a good deal. That's a deal that, especially with the draft pick situation given, now that you add that core to what I mentioned earlier, a Bucks team that is playing a lot better than what people would give you credit. And if I pulled up the Bucks stats right here, the Bucks this season are a team that, outside of Giannis, look, we've talked a bunch at Ryan Rollins. If you guys have been following this channel, you know the videos we made discussing how amazing Ryan has been this season and how enjoyable it's been for me, just as a defender, as a scorer, as a creator. He's really been a part of this team in a way that I'm unhappy, and I think anyone who's a fan of the squad is impressed by how consistent. And shout out Rajon Rondo and the training staff for that. Even Kuzma's had some moments with Miles Turner. He's been the 3-and-D guy that they've needed, while also you have Gary Trent, Derry Bird, AJ Green. I know Kevin Porter's played one game, but he was good last year. Cole Anthony's been solid. So then I think once you start getting down the bench, that's where, like, after that, like Taurean Prince, like he's still, like, he's had his moments, but it's not like what he's been prior. So I sit here and I wonder, okay, if this deal were to be available and you're the Bucks, why wouldn't you do it? I think this is one of those times where it makes sense. Now, if you're the Kings, let's shift this conversation over to the Kings. I mean, Kyle Kuzma's contract's very affordable. He actually, in theory, would help solve some of the issues that you guys have, which defensively, and in theory, I mean, but at the same time, I just want to be clear that I don't think he would be this perfect solution, because I think the team is just kind of flawed. But man, it's also such a weird time, like, to be a Kings fan, because I like Doug Christie as a coach, but it goes to show this is just not a good constructed roster at all. Like, it's a very, very bad. And if I'm a guy like anyone on this team, we've seen how frustrated LaVine and DeMar DeRozan and Sabonis have been. I really think that's because this team's just not, and they're not even playing their best defender in Keon Ellis. It's really mind-numbing and head-scratching when you see them, because what is supposed to happen right here, like we've talked about this before, this is just a team that looks like the rule of insanity, doing different things and expecting different results, which to me is just almost like mind-numbing, because does that even work? Is it even worth it? It just feels like they're just dragging the Kings. Because I said already, if you're the Bucks, you do this deal. If you're the Kings, you do this deal because you need something, and it feels like the team's fracturing. But outside of that, yeah, like, I can't realistically see a reason why you would do that. Obviously, like, the Kings, like, right here, I guess in theory, again, we just said it, Bobby Portis, Kuzma, better cost control contracts, you'd be able to get off of Gary Harris's. But then again, it's a weird one where does it really improve your situation? Does it really make anything better? I don't know if it does. That's with that all said, I don't know. I just think it's one of those situations that we won't know what happens till maybe post December 15th, probably January. I know the restriction for recently signed players is lifted on the 15th of December, but that's still too early for most teams to do a trade. And if things were really to start to happen, I would think it'd be closer to January or post New Year's, just because that's how the way the NBA operates. But I think it is something to monitor, especially if you're a fan of either team, if you want to see the reset, or if you want to see the Bucks continue to get, like, this is a really good Bucks team. Giannis Antetokounmpo looks insane. I think they did a good job of retooling the roster the best that they could and finding moves like this if they are able, because a player of LaVine's caliber won't be this cheap typically. And given the circumstances, I would say this makes sense if you were to jump on it. Let me know your thoughts. The Indiana Pacers are interested in Keon Ellis. My colleague Michael Scotto at Hoops Hype has put out that report that they're interested in him. And weirdly enough, Keon Ellis is the best defender on the Kings, and the Kings are a team that kind of sucks at defense. However, even though Doug Christie is a defensive coach, he has been playing him less and less. And one of the weird things was that they could have actually made him a restricted free agent this past offseason and then re-signed him to a long-term deal. But instead, he's going to be an unrestricted free agent who will have whatever team, if it's the Kings or if he's traded, will have his bird rights, meaning that they can go over the cap to re-sign him. And that's where it brings interest, because a lot of teams, specifically the Indiana Pacers, are interested in Keon Ellis. Now, looking at the salary caps and the numbers, the way that this deal would have to happen is that it would have to be Ben Shepherd for Keon Ellis. So before we start doing today's video, unless like the Pacers just eat the salary, which would be kind of hard, it's possible it'd be kind of hard for them, it would have to be a Ben Shepherd for Keon Ellis deal. Would you do that if you're the Pacers? Let's get into today's video and break down what my colleague Michael Scotto said. So the report that Scotto writes goes like this, quote, following Sacramento's 5-year, $140 million extension with forward Keegan Murray, the most coveted player in Sacramento's roster has been Keon Ellis. According to various NBA executives who've spoken with Hoops Hype, many executives around the league have been surprised by Ellis's declining play time with the Kings this season despite his valuable 3-and-D skill set. Some executives around the league were surprised when the Kings didn't decline Keon Ellis's $2.3 million team option for this season and work on a new deal with him when he would have been a restricted free agent this past summer and had leverage. However, with Sacramento $3.2 million below the luxury tax, a new deal for Ellis in retrospect would have likely put the Kings over that threshold. Instead, Ellis will enter unrestricted free agency in the summer of 2026, and the Kings, or a team that acquires Ellis via trade, will have his bird rights. The Indiana Pacers have been among many teams to express interest in Ellis this season and have previously targeted him, according to league sources told Hoops Hype, end quote, Michael Scotto writes. So, with that being said, short and sweet video, I told you it would have to be a deal that would be centered around Ben Shepherd. And if that's the case, is that really what they would want to do? I don't know. And to me, when I look at the current Indiana Pacers, I feel like they could do it. They also brought in Garrison Matthews, but with Andrew Nembhard, Benedict Mathurin, he would, in theory, take Ben Shepherd out, maybe play some Johnny Furphy, or even play Keon Ellis there, and then you have Pascal Siakam, Isaiah Jackson. And if you're the Pacers, if you're looking at their team stats for the season, they're a team that this year, they're the 7th worst defense, 2nd worst offense, so 2nd worst net rating. Anything could help. Let me know your thoughts down below. That's going to basically be it from me. Bye-bye.